welcome to the Varato Podcast. Today, we're honored to have Jason Greenwood on the podcast. Greenwood Consulting, the eCommerce Edge podcast, member of the eCommerce Association, B2B eCommerce Association. I won't spoil everything. I'll let Jason get into it. But anyway, Jason, welcome. And tell us about yourself and what you've been, what you've been working on.
Thanks so much for having me. This is I'm really looking forward to this. We had an off-air conversation about a week ago, and we got into some nostalgic discussions about the history of e-com, B2B e-com, some of the complexities that manufacturers, wholesalers, and distributors are facing in trying to upgrade their processes, their people, their data, their tech. I've been working in e-com for over 25 years now. And so I've got a few gray hairs to show for my trouble, but absolutely love it. Can't imagine doing anything else. Have owned my own e-commerce pure play. I've worked inside of and built both brands and agencies. And for the last 4+ years, I've run my own independent B2B e-commerce consultancy, working not only with B2B suppliers, wholesalers, and distributors, but also working with agencies, platform vendors, and investors in the B2B e-commerce space, trying to help them level up their game, help them speak the language of B2Bs, helping them understand how do I need to go to market to serve these B2B suppliers, and how can I roadmap my services and my technology to help these brands really get where they need to be from an automation and customer experience standpoint. And then laterally, I've been working really, really closely with the B2B e-commerce association as kind of that nexus to help build up a minimum standard of knowledge and a minimum standard of kind of this language and terminology and understanding, this baseline of understanding of B2B e-commerce, and really what do manufacturers need to be able to get to where they need to be? What do distributors need to have happen inside their businesses to get where they need to be? And in fact, I'm going to be emceeing the B2B e-commerce world conferences, which are being run by the B2B e-commerce association. There's going to be 3 of them this year, one in Birmingham, one in Arizona, and one in Melbourne, Australia. And so I'm going to be flying to all of those and emceeing those events this year. So I'm deeply embedded in this space. I love it. I really, really enjoy getting deep with both brands and service providers in the space to really, because for the first half of my career, 3/4 of my career, I really had a deep focus on B2C and D2C. But that is one of the reasons why I decided to specialize in B2B. Well, there was 2 main reasons why I decided to specialize in B2B from my consulting work. One is, when I look back across my career, the most interesting, most complex, most hardcore, most technically interesting projects that I worked across were all B2B projects, working with all B2B suppliers. And then secondarily, the B2C and D2C space is totally red ocean. Every consultant and their dog is a D2C specialist. Every agency and their dog, and SI and their dog is a D2C specialist. It's so competitive, really difficult to differentiate. But in the B2B space, there's a lot fewer of us that specialize in that. And it felt like a fantastic place for me to build the next phase of my career.
We talked about this before. We kind of have some similar backgrounds and kind of decisions that we made in our careers, but it sounds like you made a decision at some point to go into B2B. I think that, red ocean, blue ocean, we talked about that before. Where do you see, first of all, it's such a big, topic. There's so much to it. There's kind of old school B2B stuff on the enterprise level that's been going on for decades that a lot of people don't really know about. We talked about that a little bit. We're focused on the agency side. We're mostly focused on mid-market, which I think is also super broad. 10 million to 500 million kind of. But in that space, and I don't know if you've run across this, I'm finding businesses that are really behind, serious laggards on the technology and strategy side of things, and just with a lot of pieces. Not just they're not really even engaged in B2B commerce yet, but they don't really have their data game together. Their stuff is kind of a mess. It's in different silos. So there's work to be done. And I'm just curious, are you seeing the same thing?
Couldn't agree more. And there's this growing chasm and growing disconnect between the buying cohort in the B2B world and the selling cohort in the B2B world. And what I mean by that is Forrester came out with a report at the end of 2024 that showed that over 71% of B2B buyers in the United States today are millennials and Gen Z, which means they're digital natives, right? But yet we have legacy suppliers in this space that are second, third, sometimes fourth generation family businesses on the manufacturing and wholesale distribution side of the B2B world. And oftentimes that next generation that has come in to take over these businesses from parents and grandparents, in some cases, great grandparents, they're coming in and they're saying, hey, I'm a digital native, but we do everything old school. We do everything old style. In some cases, we do things by pen and paper and an order sheet, line order sheet. We have our sales reps that go out on call cycles once a week, once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, whatever it is. We schmooze, we take them to lunches, we take them to ball games, we do all these things, and it's a relationship-based business, which almost all B2B is relationship-based. But what they don't realize is that by focusing exclusively on the human-based one-to-one interface with their customers, that they are completely neglecting the needs of their digital native buyers. And in many cases, they are not aware that there are certain segments of their industry or their market or their vertical. There are certain channels that they will never be able to access unless they offer digital sales and support. And so I'll just give you two examples. So EDI for the largest B2B buyers is the norm, right? It's one ERP talking to another ERP. They don't want to log into an e-commerce, self-service e-commerce website, and they certainly don't want to have to ring you up. They certainly don't want to have to send you an email to place an order with you. E-procurement and punch out is another very, very common buying channel that is extremely common in the B2B procurement space, and especially for government and large commercial tenders for supply. You will not even be able to tender for those opportunities. Like if a buyer puts out an RFP or something like that for supply, unless you can service them through digital channels, sometimes you can't even apply for that tender. You can't even make a bid for that tender. And so a lot of these B2B sellers, these legacy B2B sellers, they just don't know what opportunities are out there for growing their business, but it requires some level of digitalization of their business to be able to tap into those opportunities. And it's just not something that's even on their radar in many instances.
Right. Yeah. And it could be that through a consultant like you, an opportunity might be exposed where it's just you get the right match. You get someone who is on the buy side who wants your products, but there is you have to get over this hurdle of an integration with a procurement system, and you don't even know that those things exist, right? So it's like opening the floodgate potentially for a manufacturer, let's say, if they just make that connection.
Well, it's not only that, but what I'm increasingly seeing is that the buyer is putting a gun to the seller's head, digitally speaking, and saying, okay, if we procure off you and you force us to go through channels that you want us to go through, we're going to expect a 1%, 2%, 3% additional discount. If we cannot place orders with you using our traditional procurement system and process and technology that's fully automated from our side, it's going to cost us 1%, 2%, 3% more in procurement costs to have a human being manage our engagement with you and go through these manual channels or these email channels or these phone call or live chat channels or WhatsApp channels. Or increasingly, I'm seeing sellers saying, well, just message us on Slack or message us on Microsoft Teams if you want to quote or you want to place an order. Just attach your PO to a Teams message or something like that, and we'll manually process that order for you. But the buyers themselves, they're saying, hey, we need to reduce our procurement costs. We have to slash those because, especially in wholesale distribution, those margins are so razor thin to begin with that they can't afford to do things manually anymore. Especially a lot of wholesale distributors have 1, 2, 3, 4 million SKU catalogs, and to do that and manage that manually it's a non-starter for them. And so a lot of these suppliers, they just don't understand the game and where it's headed, and it catches them flat-footed when an opportunity comes along that requires some form of technology pipeline to support that, and they just don't know what to do next.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that, and also there's some of these companies too on the supply side, on the manufacturer side. They're we've talked to companies that are 100 years old, and they've been in one family. So it's like, they know what they do, and they make really, really cool products. But there's this other world that's evolving beyond them, and if they don't, they kind of have to get up to speed. And I'm anticipating a lot of consolidation happening, where there's going to be on the private equity side, they're going to be bundling up some of these businesses, and then like replatforming them all at once.
Well, we're already starting to see that not only on the PE and supplier side, but we're starting to see consolidation in the tech, B2B tech vendor space. We're starting to see consolidation there because there's too much overlap. There's probably 30 to 40 major B2B focused or B2B only tech platforms out there today. Whereas in the B2C and D2C world, it's kind of narrowed down to Shopify and then everybody else over that side. That's not going to last. We've already started to see consolidation in the B2B agency and SI space because a lot of these agencies, they're spread too thin. There's not enough talent out there in the market to be able to have a thriving agency. And so we saw at the end of last year, Zaylab acquired Trellis, and I expect there to be a lot more consolidation in the B2B focused SI space during 2025 and beyond, because there's just not that many of us out there that have a deep enough specialization in B2B to really understand not only the tech side, the operational side, the data side, process side, and be able to consult and give wise counsel to these brands that are out there. There's just not a tremendous amount of depth of talent in this space. And so I do expect to see further consolidation, not only on the supply side, but also the services and tech side as well.
Interesting that you say that. I've seen it firsthand, so I agree 100% with you. I also anticipate a lot of disruption happening, obviously because of AI. I would say, I think we talked about this a little bit, but there's there's using AI agents and what you can do kind of on a granular basis to get more efficiencies in your businesses. But I think the groundwork is being laid for massive disruptions on new tech, like a new generation of tech that fundamentally has a different origin. Like it originates with a different kind of mindset. The same way we saw it with the internet and cloud computing. Like it sparked, because this infrastructure was built, now there's businesses that can be natively evolved from that infrastructure that wasn't there before. The same way we built the interstate highways, and all of a sudden there's businesses that are leveraging that infrastructure. I think the internet was infrastructure that allowed for these cloud computing, like companies like Salesforce just blow up. And I think the infrastructure of AI and neural nets and blockchain is going to see this is infrastructure, but how we leverage that infrastructure and how these businesses have a killer app, for lack of a better term, I don't think we don't know yet, which I find really exciting, but also scary. And I was wondering where's your mind at with that? Being a veteran like me who's been in the game for a while.
We're already starting to see hints of exactly what you are describing. And I'll give you one example. So the Motivate platform is brand new. It's, they've been in development for like a year. It's an AI native company. They are providing essential middleware for the B2B e-commerce world for commerce platforms that, for example, don't yet have the ability to ingest POs that are in like a PDF format or a CSV format or something like that and map it directly into the commerce system with little to no human intervention. And they're using multimodal AI to be able to do that, right? We have seen announcements from them that they're going to be automating. They're bringing Salesforce automation and service force automation to the B2B e-commerce world. And I've seen some demos of their tech, and it's pretty outstanding. We've seen announcements by OroCommerce and Better Commerce just in the last 3 months alone, where they are bringing Salesforce automation into their platforms natively with large language model and multimodal AI, to where instead of forcing, and that's why I've coined 2025 the year where B2Bs will finally meet customers where they are, instead of forcing them into the channels that work best for their business. So if a customer has been, for the last decade, has been sending you POs via email to their account manager in your business, right? And they're not ready to change that process anytime soon from their side, and you're trying to force them into a self-service e-commerce experience, that adoption rate in many instances can be quite low. And so you won't necessarily get great ROI on your commerce investments, your commerce tech investments. But by having this tooling that sits in the middle that allows our customers to continue to interface with us in the channels that they're already comfortable with and they're already familiar with, whether that's email, whether that's WhatsApp, whether that's Teams, whether that's Slack, doesn't really matter. Now, with these multimodal AIs and agentic AI, we can continue to deal with them through those channels, but it be fully automated for us and for them. And we can map those quote requests. We can map the POs. We can map the search experience. It's basically, think of it like headless commerce for B2B, right? And I've never been a massive proponent of headless for D2C. I think it's a solution in search of a problem in most instances for D2C. But headless makes a whole lot more sense in the B2B world, because by definition, we have a lot more digital transactional and service channels in the B2B world than we do in the D2C world, right? We've got self-service e-com, we got EDI, we got punch-out, we've got all these communications channels that are also used as transactional channels in the B2B world. But these suppliers need automation to be able to bring efficiency to their business, whilst also not sacrificing the customer experience in the process. So you're spot on. I think multimodal AI in particular, and agentic AI, is going to continue to transform this industry massively over the next couple of years.
I also see that there's the old school sales teams that are on the road, like offsite sales, which is actually generating a lot of revenue. So you're getting it's relationship based, it's old school, but there's a lot of companies that have regional sales teams that are out there on the road knocking on doors and maintaining relationships. And there's some automation that could happen there, where instead of replacing that sale, like you said, meet the customer where they are. We'll also kind of meet the sales team where they are. If the sales team's out there doing good work and maintaining relationships, it's just a matter of reducing friction and giving that salesperson tools so they can get their orders in without friction. And they can become part of the solution instead of something that we're trying to replace, which I think also creates friction, and you end up with gatekeepers that are kind of protecting their domain, and sometimes they're limiting innovation. So like having solutions that include them instead of like exclude them can also be beneficial, I think. I've been talking about this with some of my the vendors and tech companies, but also just other B2B practitioners. I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I am a massive advocate for sales teams, right? Whether you call them an account manager, a BDR, an SDR, whatever the name they are, they perform an essential sales and relationship building function within these businesses. I'm a massive advocate for that. I am not about replacing people. I'm about giving them superpowers. And I oftentimes, when I'm going in to consult with these B2B suppliers, these sales teams are massively resistant to even meeting me in many instances. Yeah. So I'll go in and they look at me like the devil. They literally go like this, and they go, "Oh, you're the bastard that's going to come in and replace us with the robots, right? You're the bastard that's going to pick my pocket and take away my commission by replacing us with e-commerce, right?" And it's like, well, no, actually, I'm a massive advocate for you, but I don't know a salesperson alive that likes admin. And according to my research and all the suppliers that I work with, for those suppliers that track time by activity of their salespeople, and not all do, but those that do, anywhere from 20 to 60% of a sales rep's time is spent on unproductive admin tasks. And those salespeople trust me They freaking hate it. They hate it
Mm-hmm.
when they have to take an order in the field, even if it's on an iPad, and then they got to bring it back to the office. They got to manually key it into an ERP, or they got to manually key it into a WMS system, or they got to hand it over to a CSR for them to key into a system. Nobody likes that. No, that is a zero value add. They don't make any more commission for doing that. They'd rather be out there knocking on more doors, landing and expanding in existing accounts, and trying to build stronger relationships where they get greater sell-through, and they're able to procure more products for those buyers, right? That's what they want to do. That's what they're good at. And so the less admin they have to do, the more time they can spend on those true value-add engagements that they have with their customers. And they can still take them to the boozy lunches on a Friday. They can still take them to the ball games. They can still do all the relationship building stuff that they've always done, but it's just we're unburdening them. And when I'm speaking to the leadership of these teams, I'm saying, do not disincentivize these teams by taking commission off them for sales through digital channels. If they've got a named account, why would you care which channel that sale actually comes into the business through? It doesn't matter. They're maintaining that relationship, and they're going to be the ones, your sales reps, if you incentivize them properly, they are going to be the ones that help onboard these customers into your digital channels, your self-service e-commerce, your EDIs, your punch outs, your automation. These are the ones that are going to hold the customer's hand and be able to have conversations with them about the types of digital services they expect and how to make their lives better. Because I tell you, if you create an environment where you ask your customers, what are the 1, 2, 3 things you love about buying off of us, but what are the 1, 2, 3 things that either you hate doing business with us, that makes it painful to do business with us, or that just if we improved that, you'd buy more, because it would be smoother and it would be more frictionless for you to buy through us. And if you give a customer the opportunity to answer that question in that way, and they feel safe to be able to be honest with you, they'll bloody tell you. And so it gives those account managers, those SDRs, those field sales reps, whatever, it gives them more time to have those kind of conversations with their customers.
Right. Yeah, and ultimately it's about, obviously keeping the customer happy and getting, and finding new customers. But it's also about creating efficiencies, which everybody at the end of the day, everyone wants that. Like if you could tell a salesperson, we can cut your administrative time and we can increase the volume of sales that you're getting commission on. And some of that's going to become automated. So you will be getting commission off orders that you're not even seeing. They're just flowing through. All you have to do is just kind of help us get these customers trained a little bit on our systems. I think, it's a no-brainer for a sales rep that, they can get engaged in that process. I think that I just mentioned training, and I think that's a word that gets underutilized. I think in all of this is the human side, and that kind of a mentality that's, I think that needs to get instilled in some companies, that training is not a one-stop shop. It's kind of a continual thing, even on the sales team side. But sometimes that's hard. It's hard to, that's a hard sell. Like a lot of people get stuck in their ways. But I do think that's going to be a big component of this digital transformation wave we're in, is the training piece.
And even from a language perspective, I was doing a sales team training and a Q&A session with one of the largest. They're a subsidiary of one of the largest drinks manufacturers in the world, and this is their water division. They sell bottled water in the 20-liter water containers for remote locations, like for mining operations and things like that. They deliver water out into very remote regions in Australia and New Zealand, and huge company with tens of thousands of customers right throughout the whole of the country. And I was brought in to tell them kind of what is the state of play, and like 75% of their customers are institutional, like B2B customers, like 25% are like domestic deliveries. And so for all intents and purposes, the vast majority of their revenue comes from B2B sales, right? And effectively B2B subscription sales of water supply. And their sales teams were starting to get asked some questions by some of their large institutional buyers and their business buyers, their commercial customers, for lack of a better term. Okay, can we buy through? We have an e-procurement system within our ERP. Can we buy off you electronically in that way? Or we've got an EDI system, and some of these sales reps had never even heard that terminology before. Mm-hmm. They didn't know. Look, what the hell does this mean? And they take it back to the business and they talk to IT and they say, hey, our customer is asking for this service. I don't even know what they mean. Can I get my IT manager on the phone with their IT manager or their procurement specialist, and can you guys work out what the hell this customer actually wants? Because they'd never heard this language before. And so it's a lot of times, humans oftentimes fear the unknown, right? It's a little bit scary. It can be a little bit intimidating because it makes you feel like an idiot if you've never heard a word before, a term before, but you got to pretend like you have. It puts you in a very awkward position when you feel like, shit, is this something I really should know? If I'm out there as a rep talking to my customers and I don't even know how to have this conversation, it's making me feel like a dummy, right? Mm-hmm. And so they resist that. They oftentimes want to push it away, and a lot of these sales reps also, remember, they think of their internal and their tribal and their institutional knowledge as their secret sauce. They think this is what I'm keeping inside of me because I've been working in this industry for 30 years. I know it inside now. That's what's allowing me to make my $250K a year salary plus bonuses, and I don't want to give that away by being able to make that a one-to-many bit of knowledge. I want my customers to have to come to me for that knowledge, right? And I'll give you one example. So I was working with a global belt manufacturer for industrial belts. And so inside their PIM system, they have some key data around which applications and machinery their SKUs work with. And they also have some existing information around OEM part cross compatibility. So let's say, I don't know, a manufacturer of a pizza, I don't know, maybe it's a combine, something like that. Okay, I've spec'd in as part of my combine, let's say it's a John Deere combine or something like that. Okay, I've spec'd in this OEM part. Okay, my part number, my equivalent of that part is this part number. So they've got that, but some of the other tribal knowledge that only the salespeople have, they haven't put into any system that can be digitalized and exposed to the customer without them going through the sales rep. And one example of that is that they said, look, if a customer orders a belt that has a specific composition, it's got a specific material, it's got a specific, it's got all these specific specifications around it, but we're out of stock of that belt. We know from our experience that in most instances, our belts are going into applications that have like a tensioner or an idler pulley. So that if we have a belt in stock that is 0.5 of an inch or less, longer or shorter than the belt the customer ordered, it's usually a drop-in replacement because the tensioner will just take up the extra tension. So if I as a sales rep receive an order, I'm out of stock of that item, I'll ring up my customer, I'll say, hey, look, we don't have that exact item, but we believe that this other item, which is like 0.3 of an inch longer than that belt, it will work for you. Do you want us to go ahead and send that instead? And the customer will say, yeah, that'll work perfectly. Go ahead and send that out instead. Now, with modern PIM systems and with modern commerce systems, we can digitalize that business logic across the catalog. And now we can expose that to the customer in real time at the point of order placement so that they can have an alternative option if something happens to be out of stock, right? And so what we have to train these sales reps that have a whole lot of institutional tribal knowledge is that we have to de-risk this business. And the reality is, if there is a piece of knowledge that is only in your head, what happens if you leave? What happens if you retire? Mm-hmm. What happens if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? Well, all of a sudden, we are now not going to be as effective at serving our customers anymore. We have to de-risk our business. So we have to get that knowledge out of your head. We have to get that into some sort of a digital system that we can expose to our customer in a meaningful way. And these are the discussions I'm taking part in every single day.
Yeah. That makes me think of something else. If like how departments get siloed in these businesses, and there's not a lot of cross-department communication and knowledge share. And I bring that up because if you're doing B2B e-commerce, you come in and you're engaging, we're going to do a big B2B commerce project. What department is your first, like, who do you hit first, right? like you can, like, we have had experience where you start with marketing because it's website, right? And then you get pushed into operations because you got to find out how to integrate with their ERP. Then you get into, accounting, finances, operations, shipping,
IT, business systems, sales.
Like, you're all of a sudden you're in every single department. And so, like, that process is fascinating because you realize, wow, these different departments, they don't even talk to each other that much. Like, we've had experiences where there's people that, like, we're introducing them to other people in the company because they're like, yeah. So things become very siloed. Anyway, it's just funny. That's what happens. Like, these big enterprises, like, you have to run each department. I mean, it makes sense, like, as a system, right? But how do you then get kind of institutional knowledge? And I also think with the digital transformation evolution, where you want to have centralized data, smart data, proprietary data, you're going to be getting that, extracting that data and centralizing it through all your different departments. And there's a lot of it. I think there's going to be some really interesting evolution in that space. Anyway, I'm wondering if I remember I was at a conference and someone was on stage, and I believe they worked for, like, Grainger, some big company. And they said, you think these B2B e-commerce projects are complicated? We have 17 different ERP systems, and we have, like, 25 different websites or more. And we have offices all over the world, and, it becomes, we could have 17 different e-commerce projects happening simultaneously. So someone raised their hand and they asked, I don't know if I should say this. I'm going to say it. Screw it. I don't care. They asked him, so obviously you're hitting on all these departments, right? And you're having projects where you're working directly with all these departments. What is your, favorite department to work with? When does it usually work the best? And he's like, whatever you do, don't work with the marketing department.
I avoid marketing like the plague. And luckily, or maybe unluckily for the brands, most of the B2B suppliers I work with don't have a marketing department. They may have a marketing manager, but it's not like the D2C and B2C world where everything is led by marketing, right? I like to call it famously the coloring in department, right? Now, look, God love them, love marketers, need them.
Got to have them. Yep.
But, in the B2B world, we may have a head of RevOps, we may have a sales director, we may have sales teams or a sales manager, but oftentimes there is no marketer in the business. The sales, they're out there, their job is to go out and drum up demand, capture demand, make their own sales, build their own pipeline. Yeah. They wear all the hats. They wear the sales and marketing hat at the same time, right? And occasionally I'll come across, I have dealt with 300 to almost $1 billion wholesale distribution businesses that have a single marketer in the business, one marketing manager in the business. And so they don't rule the roost in these companies. Sales rules the roost. And so it's you gotta work with the sales team, and you have to get them on board from day one. Otherwise, the amount of sabotage that will go on inside these projects for them to protect their turf can be extreme, and I've seen it. And so you have to get everybody on the bus, and I, like you, have experienced situations where I go in and I do discovery, and the CEO looks at the people around the table and they're going, I had no idea that's how we did that now. I know, like, when did we start doing it like that? When did that system become the single source of truth for that data? I had no idea. Or I didn't know that that's how we were dealing with that supplier. I had no idea. I didn't know that was the format that we were getting that data in, and we had to go and scrape their website for product data. I had no idea. I didn't realize that we were waiting 12 months. In one instance, I was consulting to a distributor where they were a manufacturer of about 20% of their catalog, and like 80% of their catalog they were a distributor for. So they were a hybrid business. And we see that a lot actually in B2B, where manufacturers are also distributors so that they can sell a whole solution, a whole package of solutions into the market, and sometimes services to go with it, like project management services and install services too. And the CEO didn't know until we got into discovery that there was a 12-month wait for onboarding new brands and new products into the business, because the merchandising team, they were that far behind getting product data from the new brands that they were distributing on behalf of, to get the images, to get the descriptions, to get the attributes, to get everything else into. So they could onboard a product really quickly into the ERP with just a SKU, a name, and say, for example, setting the price. But to sell it digitally, they needed all these additional assets to be able to get it into their digital systems. And there was a 12-month wait to do that, because the merchandising team was so under-resourced, and they were using no AI and no automation, and they were using no third-party data sources to augment their data. And so, but the reason why that was the case is they didn't even know that there were data suppliers out there in the market that they could buy that data from. They didn't know that there were AI technologies out there that could go and scrape suppliers' websites for that data, regardless of format. They didn't know that there were options out there apart from having human beings do 100% of that work.
I've definitely seen that too. The delay, I've seen that as well. Like I had working with some of these big companies too. Like they'll have a system that is just so antiquated too, that's not just the processes, the manual processes, the human processes, but then just getting the information into the systems so the gears start to work and you can get some order flow going through. I've seen that as well. I was talking with a consultant the other day. It's a Connecticut-based consultancy. They do a lot of digital transformation work in the supply chain within Connecticut. A lot of it's regulated industries. It's weapons, stuff that goes into Sikorsky and helicopters, and so it's it has to be fit the regulations in order to do business with each other, obviously for security reasons. But he said one of the things that he's learned the hard way is that you can't come into these businesses that have been doing something a certain way for years and pull the fire alarm. He's like, they're going to kick you out of their office and they're going to not talk to you again. And because they're making money. And they're like, who are you to come in here and pull the fire alarm? So there's tact to this. And there's things that we see that we feel like could be a lot better. But I think the approach needs to be more delicate than that. And I think I definitely will err on the side of like pulling the fire alarm sometimes when I shouldn't. And I think I've gotten older and mellowed and getting a little more patient. But I'm wondering if you see that yourself and on the consulting business, or is this something that rings true to you? And like you sometimes have to those engagements become a lot of listening, initially. And wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I'll say two things. First of all, I long ago made a decision that I will never try to sell the unsellable. Mm-hmm. If I have to come in and I have to convince a business that they need to modernize, that they have channel opportunities that they're not exploiting, that they have growth opportunities that they are not even thinking about today, that they have efficiency gain opportunities that they're not thinking about today, that they have the ability to make their teams' lives better and more enjoyable and more fulfilling in their day job instead of doing menial tasks that don't add value for anyone. If I kind of have to convince people, then that's not a good fit client for me, mm-hmm. right? If they know they need to change, but they don't know how and they don't know where to start and they have the humility to admit that, then that's a great engagement. Mm-hmm. That is a fantastic position to start from, because I'll take that every single day and twice on a Sunday where I can come in. They know, maybe even the board has said, look, we know we need to modernize. It feels like such an impossible task to even figure out where to start. We just feel completely overwhelmed. We're a third generation family business. We've been doing things the same way for 75 years. We have no idea where to go next. Can you help us? That is a great conversation to have.
Yeah.
The second thing is I try to, through my content and through my engagements with the community, I'm trying to help these businesses figure out how to make the business case, because sometimes all they need to do is to be able to justify an investment in digital technology and upgrading their processes and fixing their data. They just need a way to be able to justify that to the CFO as an investment, and then they're ready to go. They just need to be unleashed, but they don't know how to create a business case around that because they can't quantify the type of efficiencies they'll get. They have a real difficult time quantifying adoption and trying to put together an adoption plan, both internal and external, and being able to canvas their customers to figure out what to build and experiences to create. They don't know how to do that. They don't know how to have those conversations. So they're asking me to come in and have those conversations on their behalf so that I can help them put together their business case around some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's first of all, I just don't try to sell the unsellable because there's too many businesses out there that get it and know they need to change for me to focus on the ones that don't, right? Yeah. But, for the ones that don't, I'm trying to subtly, be a magnet instead of a lasso for those businesses that don't get it by constantly having content out there in the market and in their spaces, like going to trade shows and going to industry events and becoming part of industry associations and all that sort of stuff. I'm trying to get the word out as much as I can so that they can see what is coming. It's like a tsunami about ready to hit them in terms of buyer expectation changes. And I'm just trying to get the word out so that the ones that aren't quite there yet can get there before they ever meet me.
Yeah, exactly. I think the part that is you and I see the tsunami, but you can't lead with that, right? Yes. Like if you're going to earn trust and you're going to be able to help these businesses, you got to crawl, walk, run sometimes.
Totally.
And we see the tsunami over our shoulder, but we can't say anything about it. Totally. And I think that's the bigger problem. Sorry to interrupt.
I think the bigger problem I'm seeing is that these businesses want to go from 0 to 100, and they want to do it in 6 months.
And they want to make it a one-time project.
Exactly.
Like, we're just going to procure the funds. You tell us what we need to do. We're going to invest in that. We're going to walk away.
Correct.
And I'm like, that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. And then you get into like agile methodology and incremental, and they gloss over. They're like, what, you're trying to hustle me. And you're like, no, I'm not. I'm actually trying to protect you. Like these methodologies work for both of us, but they really do protect you because we don't know what's not known. Mm-hmm. And sometimes before, I have to use the analogy, like you're asking me to fix your car without lifting the hood. I don't even know what's wrong with it
yet. and you're asking me to tell you how much it's going to cost you and how long it's going to take me.
Right, yeah, but don't look at it. Like you can't talk to anybody. So I think our industry, just talking about the industry that we're in, I think we need to get a lot of thought leadership on that. Like we have to be better about, not telling them about the tsunami until they're ready to hear the story. Start by listening, figure out where the pain points are, focus on the problem and not the solution. And just do good work because we're not going to be able to help everybody. At the end of the day, we might want to, but we can't. So we find the ones that are willing to work, that are willing to put the time in and collaborate with us and have an earnest desire to change, and then we can help them. But anyway, it's from my experience. Like you never really know until you get involved. And every once in a while, you're like, this client is amazing. I love these people. They want to work. They want to get better. They're humble. They're honest. And then, and those are the ones that that's what you wake up for every morning, to go and help those people that want to help themselves. And it is really rewarding. I mean, it is rewarding to help these businesses. So. Sounds like you're doing the hard work too, Jason, on your side.
Incredibly rewarding, incredibly fulfilling. And, more and more I'm getting clients come to me for the first time and saying, we need AI. We want AI in our business. How can you help us get AI into our operations? And I'm going, well, and I use the exact same terminology as you do. I say, let's take a crawl, walk, run approach. You've never done, like if they open with the line, hey, can you help us with AI? And then I do even maybe some pre-discovery with them, and I just ask them some basic, simple questions, and I find out they've never done e-commerce before. They don't have a PIM system. They got product data spread all over network drives and desktops and printed catalogs, and it's we have. You make a very good point, which is we have to meet them where they are, but but they also have to meet themselves where they are, and this is helping them understand where they are is the harder conversation to have, because sometimes they think they're really advanced, but then when you get under the covers, you realize, whoa, I'm dealing with some seriously old and some seriously poorly designed stuff here, or maybe it was modern 20 years ago, but it's not modern now. And we need to, and because I don't just consult on the commerce piece, I'm going in and oftentimes consulting on ERP, CRM, CDP, PIM, OMS, IMS, WMS, system integration, point of sale. I'm consulting on the whole of the commerce stack and the whole of the tech stack, because in these B2B businesses, the ERP is the beating heart of their business. Always it is, right? And so it kind of, with these businesses, the discussion almost always starts and ends with the ERP, and then you work out from there as almost like a hub and spoke scenario. And so, to your point, I think we have to have empathy. We have to meet them where they are, but we have to teach them how to meet themselves where they are too. And instead of trying to leapfrog to going from horse and buggy to a jet, we got to take some baby steps here. Otherwise, the disruption to their business and the change management is going to destroy them. And helping them understand, look, let's eat the elephant one bite at a time here. We do not need to try to boil the ocean in the next 6 months. Let's roadmap this out in a way that's digestible by you and your team. And that's what meeting them where they are looks like.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason a lot of these ERP projects fail, is that they try to do too much too fast. There hasn't been a discovery. You haven't gotten departmental buy-in, and you haven't really kind of finally disentangled things. Like you can sometimes you might take a year or two to prepare to replace the ERP, right? And you're like, okay, can this be a standalone component? Can we create a microservice for this, right? And then you start to kind of disentangle and decouple things, and then what you're left off with is a very simple accounting system. And then you're like, all right, now swap that out. We've got manufacturing, we've got inventory, we've got PIM system, we've got shipping, we've got all that's done, taxation. They're all in these standalone systems. Now we can replace the frame of the car or whatever the hell you want to call it, right? When I tell people, it's like, think of it this way: you have a 50-year-old cargo ship, and it's about to fail. You need to float another brand new cargo ship up next to it, and they have to run in parallel for about a year while you put your cargo on the other ship and you replace the staff and you put the new motor in and all that. So it's a huge project, but that's what's going to save some of these companies. Like I've had companies tell me straight up, we're going to live or die by this 50-year-old, 40-year-old ERP system. And I'm like, I don't want to tell you this, but it's going to be the latter. I hate to say it. I don't want to be the one that says it. But
couldn't agree more. And I've had businesses that put in new ERP systems before they ever meet me. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I had a client a couple of years ago that had put in a new ERP system. It had only been in the business for 6 months, had no API connectivity at all.
Yeah.
and they wanted to do this whole digital transformation project, and we had to figure out how to get data in and out of this platform via flat file transfer via SFTP.
FTP, yeah, I've been there. Yeah, text file, CSV, whatever it is, XML. Yeah. Well, that's how we started. So that stuff is like, that's how we learned how to do this stuff back in the day before we had, cloud-based systems. We had to do file transfers that way, but. The other thing, and not to knock the tech vendors, but, the sales teams are incentivized to sell the ERP. That's it. And they'll sell you an ERP when you're not ready. And they'll sell you an ERP that's not a good fit for your company. And then you're left finding out later, once you engage with an SI, that you're not ready, or you bought stuff you don't need. Like, this ERP doesn't do commerce well. You shouldn't have added that component to it. You don't need it. You're going to waste time and money on that. So, I guess
I'll give you a really immediate example of this. So I'm aware of a company, a global company, a $6 billion a year business in the recreation industry. I won't get any more specific than that. They were sold over $1 million in Salesforce Commerce Cloud licenses because they were effectively sold that Salesforce Commerce Cloud was going to do all these amazing things for their business. They never ended up deploying Salesforce Commerce Cloud at all. They spent $1 million in licenses that they never ended up using.
100% believe it. I have the almost exact same story. I've seen that so many times. And that makes me mad. And that's part of the reason I started the podcast. I'm like, someone needs to go to bat for these companies and tell them the truth. Like, the tech companies, if you're a Salesforce sales rep, you sell Salesforce. That's all you do. It doesn't matter if you need it or not. That's what they're going to sell you. Yeah. So you have to come and talk to, Jason's out there and say, hey, why don't you help us on this decision-making process? Let's go on this journey together. Right. And you could immediately, just that engagement with you, I'm assuming, could potentially save companies, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more.
In some cases, millions.
Yeah,
is what I've saved some of these companies. Yeah. Just by being a voice of reason, because I'm agnostic. I don't do delivery. I hand off these kind of projects to agencies and SIs like you for the actual implementation. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to keep a development team fed with around just one or two practices, right? I want to recommend the right thing for my customers, regardless of what that right thing is. And what I tell my customers is, when you meet a vendor sales rep, if all you've got is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. That's just how it works. These guys are incentivized to push their own barrow,
and they're good. They're good at it. They're really
amazing,
good at it,
man.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm sitting on these calls with these vendor reps, and I'm going, "Wow."
Yeah.
If I was in the buying seat, I would probably believe this.
Yeah, I would be tempted. Yep. Yeah. It's true. It's true. This is where we could probably talk for another 2 hours, because the war stories. But anyway, the point is, this is the Varato Podcast. Talking to guys like Jason is why I do it. Some really good insights, man. Sounds like you're doing some good work. How can people find you out there on the internets?
Man, they can Google or ChatGPT my name, and I'm everywhere. But eCommerce Edge Podcast, they can find me on every podcast channel, including YouTube. I put out a ton of content on LinkedIn almost every single day. Jason Greenwood on LinkedIn, and my website, greenwoodconsulting.net. If there's anything I can help them with, I also link out to a lot of my content from my website. So yeah, I'm here to help in any way I possibly can. And yeah, I'm trying to do the same thing as you. I'm trying to put out as much content out there for free as I can, so that even if people want to try to do some of this stuff themselves, at least they're doing it in as informed a way as possible. That's that they're not going to get absolutely killed in the market.
Yeah. And what we tell people, and I don't know, this probably, probably works on your side too. There's no harm in calling Jason and just talking to him. It's free. It's like, right? So that, Jason might say, hey, yeah, I can really help you. Or maybe you should go talk to this other person. But, if you're a business that's looking to make some changes, there's no harm in talking to Jason. Like it can only help you. And Jason, and it might just tell you, actually, you got to talk to somebody else, or so anyway, thanks for doing the good work, Jason, man. Thanks for being on the podcast. This is Varato. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next time. You can find us on all the podcast channels. It's varato.com, Varato.com.